Hello, my friends, and welcome to episode 57 of the Kiss Army Nation podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Pasquale Veri.
And I am Claudio Spera. Welcome to the show, everyone. In some of the previous discussion panels, we looked at different albums and how they influenced or impacted KISStory. So we talked about the beginning of the decline with Unmasked and then a significant comeback with Revenge. In this episode, though, we will take a slightly different approach. Instead of talking about a specific album, we will dig into an era that, for most of KISS fans, was a definite inflection point. So the 95-96 era marked the real return of KISS, or at least the big comeback of the Fantastic Four. Question is, was it the proper time for the original KISS to reunite?
And to discuss this and more, we're happy to be joined by the best the Kiss Army Canada has to offer, Craig Patton and Patrick de Montigny. Welcome back to the show, boys.
Thank you so much.
What an
Always a
introduction.
pleasure. Always look forward to it.
What an introduction. Guys, always happy to have you. But before we begin the discussion, I would like to ask you an off-the-topic question, as we normally do. So, which is somehow directly related to our topic today. So what are your thoughts about the third release of Off the Soundboard, live at Donington, 1996? Craig, what's your take?
Listen, I think that definitely in the right direction with the choice of the show. I think that it's more of a genre I think we want to listen to, right? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of other stuff. Me and Pat, we're into vintage stuff, but it's definitely in the right direction. Is it out there available? I think probably is already out there available. But no, I was happy to see that there was a choice. And no, if they continue like that, it should get better and better.
Nice. Pat?
Very happy as well. I'm happy that they did something. They chose something rather pre-2000. It didn't have to be the original band. It could have been, but I'm very happy with what's being offered now. Of course, there's always that better show somewhere. I saw some fans going, yeah, but they should have chosen a better show. But at this point, I'm very happy with what it is, and I really look forward to it, actually. I'm very happy with that choice, for sure.
Nice. Well, you raised the bar a little bit. Okay,
Yeah.
so Pask, what do you think?
Well, 2 points I want to make. Number one, with the release of the third Off the Soundboard, I'm a little concerned that they're only going to focus on the later makeup era and not necessarily with the 80s and especially the 70s. And I think the 80s and 70s are what KISS fans are really asking for. And, I was listening to an episode of Kiss Army Things, and they made an interesting point. Maybe they're never going to release the 80s stuff because of the legalities with Eric Carr and what that would entail. So that was a really good point. So are they only going to focus on the later stuff? I'm hoping not. But to me, this third release we're definitely going in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
But having said that, I am a lot more excited about this release than the last one. Absolutely. And Craig, there are other versions out there. I don't know if it's going to be any better, any worse in terms of quality, but it's cool to have representation from the reunion because we didn't have much in terms of official reunion concert footage or even music. It was the Second Coming video was about that was released for it. And thank God for Andrew Scambatti. He came up with something really amazing for the 96 reunion, but really not that much. So this is adding more to that particular era, and I am definitely looking forward to it. Claudio?
Good stuff. Yeah, I'm happy too. I'm with you guys. So it was great news. If we compare with what has been released, for Virginia Beach, this is a step up. Okay, so definitely. So now, whether they're gonna revisit some of the vintage and old stuff from the 70s, I hope so. I don't see why not. Interesting point what you mentioned, Pascal, about the 80s and Eric Cards and then rights and all of that. That's interesting. But yeah, definitely happy with this. I love the reunion. I think they sounded great, and I think Donington is a nice testimony, of the way the band sounded at that time. It's good. Happy, yeah.
So that's basically our topic is going to be the reunion tour. And I'm really excited to be talking about this particular topic today, because really the reunion is a huge part of KISStory, as we all know. But, before we get into the reunion specifically, I want to go back a little and talk about Carnival. So in your opinion, what was the intent for KISS going grunge with Carnival of Souls? Craig, what do you think?
Geez, that's a great question, because I remember when I first picked up that album, I put it on and I'm like, what is this?
Yeah.
It was like, I don't know, Alice in Chains / Nirvana / I don't know. It was like
Soundgarden. Right.
Yeah, it was all over the board, right? And it grew on you after a while. I have to say that, but you have to be in that mood again. Like we talked on the previous episode, you got to be in the mood of that album that week, that day, or whatever. There's a lot of stuff, and I don't think they even played any of that stuff live. But I don't know what the direction or what the thing. Maybe it was something that Eric and Bruce wanted to put out. They wanted to again test the market of what was the trends in those days, what we think was going to work, or the direction of music in those days. Or was this one of those things that they had all these piles of songs and let's just release it and get over with? I don't know. I'm at a loss for words. I tried to do some research on this, and I'm unless you guys have more points than I do, I really don't know. But I enjoy it. But that's what I can say about that.
Okay, Pat.
I think what was happening when they were recording it, you had this feeling after Revenge and after the Revenge tour, they were concentrating. Gene kept saying, "Oh, we're all firing on all cylinders, so everything's going to go well." But they kept procrastinating making a new record, And I think they didn't know what to do next because they had their eyes on something a lot bigger, which was the reunion. So I think as early as 1994, they were already testing the waters, and so they were doing the album half-heartedly. Mm-hmm. The focus was not there as much as Revenge. We all know Revenge, they knew where they wanted to go and everything, but with Carnival of Souls, it's like, okay, let's do this, but no real focus, and it shows. Although there are some few songs on there that I like. I like a song that a lot of people seem to hate, which is "In My Head" from Gene. Mm-hmm. I love "Hate," the song "Hate," and Paul Master and Slade, which is the best song off the record. The rest is so, and grunge didn't suit KISS very well.
No,
in my opinion.
I agree.
Yeah.
Claudia, what do you think?
Well, I think that as many other times in the past with KISS, so they were trying to fit, with the market, what was going on at that time. Without going into the specifics of whether I like it or not, I think it was different, same way as The Elder was different, same way as Dynasty was different in 79 compared to what they were doing before. So this was kind of a known territory for KISS, trying to adapt. Were they successful or not? Well, it's hard to say, because then right after, they go to a reunion to complete different things, back to the makeup, back to the 70s. So it's a bit lost, in KISStory. This is a very strange moment for the band. And I agree with Pat. You can tell that the production is not there. It could have sounded much better, but I think they had a contract and they needed to release it, and it leaked. Okay, we know that it leaked quite fast, so they had to release it. I think that if KISS had the choice not to release it at that time, they could have canned it. They could have kept it secret, because it didn't match with the reunion that was coming up. So kind of strange, yeah. Pasc, what do you think?
In a weird kind of way, Carnival of Souls is rock and roll over too. Now, let me explain.
How's that?
Okay, so it's the same pattern with Kiss, right? Every time they release something, they seem to second guess themselves. They released Destroyer back in '76. And, fans are complaining about it. They were worried about it. And they felt that they needed another direction, hence Rock and Roll Over. And Destroyer, they keep saying Destroyer, Revenge was the next Destroyer. In a sense, it was, because it was an amazing album. It brought Kiss to the next level. But I think, once again, they panicked. It didn't do very well. The concerts didn't sell very well. And they want to take it, again, to another level and a different level. So they thought, how can we make this a little different now? Let's make it even edgier. Let's make it dirtier. Let's make it harder. And it came out with Carnival of Souls. They're always trying to get the best material out there, but never staying true to who they are. And if they were true to who they are from the very beginning, I think their music would have been consistent throughout their entire career. Now, I'm not complaining about that, because in hindsight, Dynasty, Unmasked, Elder, Crazy Nights, very different than the actual Kiss sound. But looking back now, we are blessed as Kiss fans to have a diversity of Kiss music.
Absolutely.
And I think it's great for us fans. But that's what I think happened with Carnival. Once again, they're second guessing themselves. That was the result.
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah. So now if we try to put things into perspective, so KISStory tells us that the band has always tried to reinvent itself, to keep up with the music business or the market, in order to remain present. So, however, the 94-95 Kiss, during that era, so they seem to revisit old and vintage material. We can remember conventions and blah, blah, blah. Why was that? So, Craig, what do you think?
I take it this way. I think that it started with the conventions, right? They started playing older stuff, then they brought Peter and the Ace into the VH1 or MTV, studios, and they tested the water. I think it was a testing ground to something bigger and better to see if it's still relevant. They played a lot of old tracks. They rehearsed old tracks. They brought in old members. They saw the reaction with the population if it would be feasible to rekindle that magic. I think definitely they were lost to Carnival of Souls. They went to that measure, definitely to regain lost stardom or fame or fortune or whatever the case may be. It's Kiss is one thing for me. It always reinvents itself.
Mm-hmm.
They lose their way, then they come back. Then they lose their way, and then come back. But then again, like Pasc was saying, there's an album for every kind of mood. So I think definitely this was in the works, like you guys were saying, even before Carnival of Souls and testing the waters. And I'm pretty sure they were in conversations with Peter and Ace and that
already. Yeah, okay.
How it could work and what the price tag would be, and definitely testing the waters. Yeah.
Patrick?
Yeah, I think but it's funny because I think by 1993, 1994, like even with the release of Kiss My Ass, you would read everywhere bands that were popular at the time, whether it was Alice in Chains or Soundgarden or all those people, they would say that Kiss was their favorite band in high school. Now, nothing against any member, but we know pretty well that what they meant was the original Kiss in the 70s.
Yeah.
The build up, I think it came from that, and the 70s were cool again, and all of a sudden other bands were starting to reunite as well. So I think it was in the air, and I think it was only a matter of time before Kiss would do it, especially when Paul says in his book that when he went to see the Eagles in '94, he was like, wow, if those guys can get along, we can make it work with Peter and Ace to some extent.
Exactly.
And probably that's what the promoters were wanting anyways. So I think that's the reason why in the conventions they were playing the old song. They would display all the vintage stuff, even the merch they were selling. Because I was there, they were selling vintage merch,
Yes.
vintage images.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, that said pretty much where this was going.
Yeah. Okay. Ask.
If you look at KISS concerts in the 80s, they didn't play a lot of their vintage 70s material. They played a lot of their earlier, their recent 80s material. I see that as, you know, KISS trying to get that image behind them and move forward as a band. So once the Make It came off, we're a different kind of KISS now. So let's show you that it's not just about the show, it's also about the music. We could come up with some great music. So they want to focus on that and put the spectacle behind them. And it's just, no matter how hard they try to do that, in my opinion, it just wasn't working, because that legacy was always behind them, was always a shadow. And it's a legacy they cannot outrun as much as they tried. So as the years went on, I think they started to realize, like, we're a sinking ship. And it's only so long that we can do this without taking our legacy into consideration. And I like what Patrick said about other bands saying how much of an influence KISS was. I think that made KISS realize, like, yeah, we are that influence. It's not the 80s stuff, it's the stuff from the 70s with the original members. And this is KISS. And they started to release more and more of their vintage material at their concerts. That's why I loved Hot in the Shade. It was just an amazing set list with a mix of 80s and 70s music. It blew my mind because it just brought back so many memories of that era. And that's what it was about. And I think that's not something KISS planned. It's just, again, they're just trying to do whatever they can to stay afloat.
Yeah.
And now it's like, let's bring in the nostalgia idea behind our shows to get people interested in KISS.
Yeah.
That's what I think happened.
Yeah.
And then there was that Grammys thing where they showed up and the crowd went wild. I think that was also a test to see
of course,
what the reaction would be. Would they laugh at them, or would they say, "Hold the crowd back"?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Claudia, what do you think?
You know, I think by that time they were once again, maybe it's a strong word, but they were lost. Okay, and they needed to touch base again. You know, and what better than going back to the 90s, to the 70s music. Okay, sorry, to the 70s music. And I think that they also leveraged on the fact that they could trust Eric and Bruce musically to play anything that they wanted. Okay, even though it was, you know, unplugged or something. You know, Eric is a huge KISS fan. You know, Bruce can play anything, and so for them it was a safe move. And I think it allowed them to reconnect with the fans, to reconnect with KISStory. And it was a good business, because if the reunion was cooking, what can be better than having conventions, you know, and showing everybody merch, you know, the costumes and all of it. It was the perfect, you know, first act of what was coming. So again, now it's after the fact. I think we knew it was coming, but at that time, I don't know what you guys think, but I really enjoyed, you know, the convention era. I loved listening to those tunes again. In that way, it was fantastic. You know, it was great. But that's what's.
No, I've heard arguments that, you know, KISS wasn't going to last much longer till after that convention, you know, because, you know, with Revenge not being very successful and actually Carnival of Souls wasn't released yet, but where was the band going from here, you know? And we'll talk more about what happened afterwards, and we all know what happened afterwards, you know. But, you know, what happened during that era basically is that KISS created like a nostalgia package, right? So they reopened their warehouse and started to showcase old costumes, memorabilia, created these conventions. So guys, what are your thoughts about the direction that this was going? Craig?
The direction it was going, I believe, would be definitely up into finding some lost fame. I mean, definitely they wanted to work on the nostalgia part, like you talked. Um, they wanted to get that second generation of fans. They wanted to say, "Hey, wow, the magic is back. These are legends. This is what it was like when I was a kid," kind of thing, right? And they play on that continually, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would it have gone more like I think you nailed it right on the head there, Pascal. I think up to that point, it was like, okay, they're a floundering fish. What's going to happen, right? But I think that whole business model or whatever you want to call it saved them. Going back to the roots, going back to the 70s, going back to what made them famous, right? If you look in the 80s, like you were saying, Pascal, I mean, when they used to play the songs, they're unrecognizable because they're played in such a higher tempo that what song is that? Like, I'm a huge Kiss fan. I don't understand what they're saying. It was like a 40, like a 33 spent on 45, and I think that to me damaged a lot of their fans too, saying that they're not doing it the right way, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And the diehards basically, they kept the band alive, right? So what we want is what we pay for, right?
Yeah.
So I think that, I definitely think that it was time to go if they hadn't have done that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Pat?
Yeah, I think, with the conventions and everything, they were following a path that I think once they followed it, they couldn't go backwards and say, oh, no, it was just like a little deviation. We're going back to what we are doing now. I don't think it could have worked because clearly, again, as we had mentioned earlier, there was no real focus on the music they were doing. If they would have said, oh, we used the past to guide ourselves to what we're going to do next as musically and maybe with image, maybe, but if they were too far gone, they had to go the reunion, especially when Ace and Peter showed up for Unplugged.
Yeah.
Forget it. You have the fans when the four of them are sitting before they play bell going, Kiss, Kiss. I think that was a very strong signal. How can you go back?
Yeah.
And I believe if they wouldn't have done that, I think they would have done a club tour. I don't think, especially since the era, I got to be fair, was rough for every band of that genre in that time. They couldn't fill out clubs,
Yeah.
It was a very rough time. So, once Kiss planted that seed, there was nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
Okay. Mario?
Well, I think I mentioned that before. My reaction was, I was hoping for the reunion to happen, listening to all those tunes and, memorabilia and costumes and conventions. It was like going back to the 70s. So that was my first reaction. And I thought at that time, we're going to touch on this later on the next question, but they had to do it. If not, it was done. It was the end. To me, there was nothing else to do. Yeah. What do you think, Pascal?
I remember being at the convention and telling myself, "Wow, where are they going to go from here?" And I completely agree with Patrick. There was nowhere else to go. The way Kiss was at that time, there was nowhere else to go. And I also remember Gene, this is the Montreal convention, saying that he was asked, is there going to be a reunion? And he said a flat out no. And I believed him. Now, I don't know. Fans are saying that at that time, the reunion was in their head. It was already in the planning. I don't know. I'm not sure. But I did not expect the reunion to happen. I didn't think that this was a springboard. The convention was a springboard to the reunion happening. I thought this is it. And I remember having an amazing time because I thought to myself, this is the last time I'm going to see Kiss, and it's okay because it really, for me, it ended with my favorite lineup and, good on them. And it brought us back to the 70s with the music and, and the costumes and the memorabilia that they were selling. It's like we're back in the 70s again. We've come full circle. Yeah. It's over and done with,
That's right.
I thought that was it.
Yeah. it's tough because we talked about this before, but we felt with Paz that we wanted to ask the question, guys. So, do you think that KISS was getting close to the end at that time, and were they wrapping up? Most likely not so much with the convention, but do you think it's a coincidence that when they recorded Carnival, they called it the final sessions? Okay, so do you think that if they didn't go into the conventions and then the reunion, that was the end for KISS at that time, around that era? Craig?
Great question. I really don't know. I think it was an end of an era, a final sessions of a certain part of KISS, and then a start of a new KISS again, or a new old, you want to call it. It's tough to say. I mean, there were so many things in that area that happened, like it was renewed KISS. I brought my kids to see them. Yeah, see, these guys actually did exist. This was the legend. This was the magic, right? And whether they caught on or not is another story, but they liked it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it would have been, I think it would have been closing the door. They would have not hanged up their boots. I think they would have hung up their grunge coats.
But because it's interesting that at that time they released a tribute album of a band that is supposed to be alive. Then they released the KISStory, the big book. So it was like a package of saying, okay, bye-bye, that was great, see you.
And then didn't the box set come out around that time too, and all that stuff, and I think that I think it was the end. Yeah.
Pat, what do you think? You agree with Craig?
Pretty much. I think what would have happened is if they had released Carnival of Soul as a proper release and say, okay, let's do a tour, it would have been a disaster, I think. And that, who knows what they might have done next. They would have sat down probably and say, okay, well, we have to figure out what the next step is. But as we said earlier, the seed was already planted that they were going to do the reunion. So therefore, I think they recorded Carnival of Souls going, but okay, now for the reunion tour, their minds were not totally into that.
Right.
And once the reunion was there, I think it sparked life into KISS, because I think the general feeling, aside from people like us, were like, oh, KISS, are they still together?
Yeah.
The people who were not fans had this notion that KISS was finished. They didn't even know that they had removed the makeup. I mean, so they were pretty much a dead issue outside of people like us.
Yeah.
So I think by doing the reunion, it sparked back life into KISS. Definitely. And I think that's what they had to do. People can disagree and say they shouldn't have gone back with Ace and Peter and things like that. But the truth is, it did. I mean, 1995, KISS is doing conventions and ballrooms. Nothing wrong with that because I enjoyed it. But then very next year, they're playing stadiums.
Yeah. World tour. That's right. Exactly. Yeah.
So that pretty much says it all.
Ask?
Again, I think for me, when I was at the convention, I thought this was the end. Okay. I don't think KISS believed that was the end. Knowing this band, they're not going to quit. They're going to, like Pat was saying, they're going to find something else. With the release of Carnival of Souls as an official release, where will it go from there? Oh, it didn't work. Let's figure something else out. They were going to go out that easily. And by the way, Claudio, the final sessions, that wasn't the original title of the album. The final sessions came after they released it during the reunion tour. They called it that. Okay. But no, I think that the band would have figured something else out or try to go in another direction. But and then the reunion tour happened, and even with the reunion tour, they couldn't have imagined the success of that tour, and they were surprised at the first show. So let it 23 minutes or something like that. Yeah, they were shocked. So they had no idea. They thought, let's see what happens. Let's hope for the best. And they were probably hoping for half that success that they got. And they got so much more. They didn't predict what you couldn't possibly predict the success that they had. And that says a lot about, in my opinion, their confidence in where they were moving in the future.
Yeah.
What do you think, Claudio?
Well, I agree with you guys. I think, yeah, I think it was right there. It was kind of wrapping up an era. And now we know that they did a good move, with the reunion. But yeah, it was a strange feeling at that time. I remember when I saw all that was happening, I thought, well, this is it. The same feeling that you got when you were at the convention, Pask, saying like, okay, that was a great journey, but it is what it is. I at that time I didn't have all the insight, and I didn't know what was cooking with the reunion. I really enjoyed what was going on with the convention and revisit of the past. I got a bit emotional when I saw Peter in one of the conventions. I thought, well, that was great, but I thought it ended there. I didn't think that it was going to go to the reunion. But yeah, definitely. To me, they were wrapping up, and do something else. Yeah.
Okay, so were they wrapping up? Were they not wrapping up? Well, we don't know, but the reunion did eventually, and in fact, happen.
Yeah.
Now, here's a question that really relates to the title of our podcast, right? Was this their last chance? Do you believe the reunion was the last chance for KISS to move forward? Greg?
Yeah, I do. I mean, if I could just throw a couple other things in there, I remember being at the Montreal convention, also walking around, looking at the memorabilia, the costumes, everything, is saying, "Wow, it'd be really great to see these guys again with all the full regalia." Whether Gene and Paul wanted them back in the band, to Peter and Ace, is it the right thing to do? Listen, as a brand. As a successful brand, I think it was, but as a personal vendetta, I don't think it was, because they seem to be okay, and they changed. They'll be who they are, and that's the way it is, right? But no, definitely, no. That's basically all I have to say about that.
Okay, Pat.
Yeah, I think it was probably their last chance for sure. The timing was just right, because I don't think if they would have tried their hand at the reunion like in the early 90s or late 80s, it would have worked the same way, for the reasons I had said earlier about bands citing them as major influences and things like that. And also the market was hungry for that again. But it was definitely their last chance, because I remember I use a lot of references, but Paul was saying that when they go and see promoters to tell them about a tour, when it was not the original lineup, they were offered like chips and soft drinks. But when they tested the waters and said it was going to be the original band with the makeup, they had a whole buffet in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it was a very strong message. So yes, it was their last chance, because again, if they would have went ahead and toured for Carnival of Souls, I think it would have been probably even worse than Revenge. The tour would have lasted maybe a month, because nobody was knocking on their door to book them. It's a very rough business, and I think business-wise, it was their last chance for sure.
Yeah.
Claudio?
Well, I think it was the last resource, to keep the business going. And we also have to remember, if I'm not mistaken, so correct me if I'm wrong, I think by that time, it's when Doug McGee, joins the club, as a manager. And this guy, of course, Paul and Gene, that they are, business guys, and they know it all. But of course, there's always nice to have someone that comes from the outside, a guy who had worked with Bon Jovi, Motley Crue, made them very successful. And maybe, that was the only thing to do, just to either sink or being extremely successful. And, thanks for KISS, they were extremely successful with the reunion tour. So yeah, definitely last shot, last chance, definitely.
I find it funny, again, at the expo, at the convention, I thought that was a last ditch effort, but I didn't think that they would call it quits. I think somehow they would find a way to move on. But when the reunion tour was announced, I sort of, felt a little down, because I thought, okay, now this is the beginning of the end. because they're going to do this reunion tour. It's going to be a one-shot deal, and then it's over because they really can't go anywhere after this. I mean, if I said that with the convention, imagine this. There's no way they're going to. But this is great, right? Because this is a last-ditch effort for the band to regain the success they had in the 70s. So yes, this was definitely their absolute last chance. And to be honest, I remember I was hoping that they would do a one-off and then go back to the singer and Kulick,
Eric and Bruce,
lineup, because the reunion is like no different than the convention, right? The convention was created to build nostalgia, and now this show was created to build even more nostalgia. And if they go back to that lineup, now KISS can move forward again. So I was just trying to find hope that KISS would continue to move on, you know? And Patrick, I remember the convention that you organized where Bill O'Coin was there. And I'll never forget, Bill said that KISS was calling it quits.
Yeah, I remember.
You remember that? And like,
I froze when he said that.
Yeah. That confirmed all of my fears. Like I knew this would happen with this reunion. I wish this reunion never happened, because maybe KISS would have lasted longer. And now because of this damn reunion, they're going to call it quits. You know, it just reaffirmed my fears when Bill O'Coin did say that.
Yeah, true.
So, and during that time, I remember, you know, all of us, after seeing Peter in one of the conventions, and then with Ace, you know, in the MTV Unplugged, do you guys think that the MTV Unplugged was used to test the water and see what the reaction was from the fans for a possible reunion, Craig? I think you said yes before, right?
Yeah, most definitely. That was definitely the springboard to get this, find out the reaction of the crowd. And although they did do other things like, you know, inserting vintage songs and stuff like that and see what the reaction was, but I think definitely bringing those guys up on the stage was because I still don't think Gene and Paul wanted Peter and Ace back, but I think they did it for the fans and they did it for the money. You know, it's obvious. Yeah. And you know what? The magic was back when you know, as much as, let's say, Bruce and Tommy are better players than Ace, I still think that the four of them have a special magic, right? So
yeah. Patrick?
Yeah, probably Unplugged was also, like you said, test the waters to see, first of all, if they could work with Ace and Peter and how they would, you know, manage that whole event. And again, when they came out, judging by the reaction of the crowd, it did say, this is the KISS we want.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about necessarily talent. I mean, Bruce and Eric, if you listen to the pre-reunion section, they played, I mean, Bruce did this solo, like For Sure Knows Something, which if you listen to it, man, does he do a great job.
Oh yeah.
The playing is awesome and everything, but the spark is there when Peter and Ace. It's kind of it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah,
awesome playing the majority of the show, but then when the four of them are together for the two songs before Bruce and Eric come back, you see, oh God, this is
it.
Yeah, even without the makeup, it's funny, you know.
Yeah. Bas, what do you think?
I don't think they were testing the waters. I remember, you know, MTV Unplugged was very popular back then. And, you know, KISS wanted to do that as well. It would be good for them. But MTV did not want that lineup to do the Unplugged. They wanted the original lineup. And that's how I think they came up with that particular concept. This is just another example of the nostalgia package that we were talking about. With the conventions and, you know, mentioning Peter and Ace and various videos and stuff, you know, it's always bringing back the past. And, you know, I remember watching that like it was yesterday. I remember I was at university and I was studying for an exam and I just didn't want to go out. And my friends actually came over and goes, we're forcing you to take a break. And we watched that video. At the time I was married with my wife who hated KISS, and she ended up watching it with us. Oh, but I remember when Peter and Ace came on, it's like, wow, like, yeah,
Yeah,
the magic is absolutely back. And
yeah,
Kiss felt it, everybody in that room felt it. And after that, the reunion was inevitable. It's like, we got to do this kind of
yeah,
thing. But
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
think it was planned. I don't think it
yeah,
was testing the waters. I think the reunion tour evolved to what it is as a result of Kiss, you know, sort of slowly drowning and trying to stay above water.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah,
Mario?
it's interesting because after so many years and the history is so rich that I think we have the tendency sometimes to overthink and to come up with conspiracy theories or something like that. Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Pasc. At that time I don't think it was planned. I took it the way it was, and it was really emotional. I agree with you when I first saw them playing Beth, with Peter singing. I remember being in front of the TV, with tears in my eyes. It was unbelievable. But yeah, so but we have to agree these guys are extremely smart, and they picked a huge event, to showcase the original lineup.
Yeah.
What better opportunity to if they were testing the water, let's say, that was the opportunity, that was the event, to have them
Sure.
four,
Mm-hmm.
all of them. But yeah, that was quite shocking. I was happy to see them together again.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was no doubt that that show, was just amazing. The magic was back, and even watching it today, it still feels fresh.
Yes. Yes.
And the energy, the magic, it was undeniable when the original four took that stage. But as you know, look what happened to Eric and Bruce as a result.
Yeah.
How do you think the band handled that particular situation with Bruce and Eric? Would you have preferred that they both stayed in the band? Greg?
It's a tough question. I think that look, it is undeniably what they had to do is what they had to do, right? They became casualties of war, and
Well put.
it's unfortunate, definitely unfortunate. But listen, Eric got his chance to come back in later on. Bruce unfortunately didn't get to crack the lineup again through Tommy, but I would like to see Bruce with Ace makeup. But anyway, that would be something. But yeah, I think that's the way it was. I mean, they're casualties, unfortunately, and I feel bad for them because they did bring a new kind of sound, a new kind of perfectionist turn to the songs. Like, when you hear Bruce playing a song, he doesn't bugger up too much, whereas Ace sometimes, Ace is Ace, right? And live or die with it. I don't know. It's unfortunate for them, honestly. I do feel for them, but at the end of the day, it's business, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Pat?
Yeah. You see, any musician that goes into a band like of this magnitude, they should always expect at some point the main members coming to them and say, look, we've worked out something with the guy who was there previously. We're going to make this work, and this is how it's going to be. It's no different than Motley Crue. I read the dirt, and the way they said to John Corabi, look, it doesn't matter if Paul McCartney sings in this band. The company won't support anything unless it's the original band.
Yeah.
So like you mentioned, Craig, there's lots of business there. It's nothing personal or even a lack of talent. It's just saying this is what the business tells us to do. Probably I'm pretty sure that Gene and Paul, found it easier to work with Bruce and Eric compared to Peter and Ace. But business-wise, numbers talk. And I think that's where it had to be at this point,
Exactly.
So they handled it as best as they could, but there's no easy way there's no nice way to do that kind of thing.
Okay, Claudio?
Well, that's that's the perfect way to put it. What Craig and Pat just mentioned. That was it. So, how the band handled the situation? Well, I think they did the best they could. They were still in great relationship with both Bruce and Eric, and history shows that they're still around. And Eric came back, and Bruce, he's part of the family. So no hard feelings. They both understood that it's business. Every time Bruce was asked his question, he was very, honest. And he said, well, we knew, the moment that, Peter and Ace were around, it was happening. It's just a no-brainer. Would I have preferred both of them to stay? Well, when the spark was already there with Peter and Ace, it was inevitable. It had to happen. I wanted to see the reunion now. Then history says that things didn't work out great, and I was happy to see back Eric Singer. I could have loved. This might bring some turmoil here with the audience, but I could have liked to see Bruce instead of Tommy, but that's another story, What about you, Pas? What do you think?
Well, first, I want to preface by saying that, yes, this was a business decision, and I don't blame them for doing that. But I remember them saying that it's temporary, right? So yeah. I think they put Eric and Bruce on the back burner because, again, they weren't sure how well the reunion would do. Mm-hmm. And then when it did really well, they burned them. And that's what I personally didn't like, and I could imagine how Bruce and Eric felt thinking, this is just temporary, but now we're never coming back. And again, I loved that lineup, and I was hoping that it would have been a one-off and then they would come back, because regardless of how KISS felt about the direction of their career, I always thought that KISS was moving forward. And if it stops to move forward, you call it quits, but at least they went out on a high.
Yeah.
But now it changed direction with the reunion. And yes, they're definitely still on a high right now that they've never come down from. But it's a nostalgia package. It's a nostalgia act.
Yeah.
They went in a whole different direction.
Yeah.
But again, that's another episode, because we mentioned this before. Is KISS just a nostalgia act? I don't believe that they are. Because later with the reunion at Psycho Circus, I think it was about nostalgia. But then when Eric came back and Tommy was in the band, I believe that even with makeup, KISS began to move forward again.
Okay.
But that was years later. And in that transition period, I was disappointed that Bruce and Eric were not back in the band. And they weren't doing revenge type music and shows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How would they would have, sorry to interrupt, but how would they would have felt, let's say, we're taking a step back, guys, you're going to be on the sidelines and while we finish this reunion tour, a year, 2 years, whatever. And then Psycho Circus comes out. Then the farewell tour comes out. Then, right? So they're still sitting there going, okay. And at the end of the day, let's face it, they're not the original four. So it's like with Vinny, it's like with Tommy, and they're hired hands, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's like having a job when you're a temp, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anything can happen at any time, and that's what you said, Pascal. You said it so well. It's just that you're a hired hand, and then it's just that the timing for them was really bad, because instead of being a 1 or 2 year thing, it ended up being a 4 or 5 year with the Psycho Circus and with the reunion and everything else. Not reunion, but the farewell tour. It just never seemed to end, right? Because the people, that's what they wanted. That's what they were making their money with, right? So it's unfortunate.
Yeah. But now, guys, so after the fact, and knowing that the reunion tour was a complete success, so the question, I think it remains valid. So do you think it was a good move for the band to reunite and recreate the magic, even if it was only for a couple of years? And why do you think so? Craig? Yes, no?
100%. I agree that this is what the move they had to do. It was a bang-on decision for me, for many other fans, second-generation fans that they turned on. I brought my kids. I'm pretty sure a lot of other people brought their kids too. Say, this is what we used to listen to when we were kids. And you know what? They were not stupid either, because they couldn't go ahead and charge $13-15 a ticket anymore. They were talking $250, $300 a ticket now.
Yeah.
I know times have changed and things have gone up, but that they really played on that nostalgia thing, and they could charge whatever they wanted.
Yeah.
And people would have went.
That's right.
And I think that
the merch and
then it brought up all the vintage things again, and it brought up all the album sales, and it was a snowball effect of all recreation, if you want to call it.
Yeah.
Definitely the right move.
Yeah.
And
My personal opinion before going to Pat, I think that if they had actually came up with an album, playing the four of them instead of what we know about Psycho Circus, the history could have been so different. So I think that the business could have gone skyrocketing again, but it was difficult to deal with Peter and Ace again. So anyways, Pat.
Yeah, it was the right move too. And the proof is that you had so many others that followed the same path afterwards, whether it was Journey with Steve Perry, Motley Crue with Vince Neil, the Sex Pistols even.
Yeah.
It created like it was the time to do that kind of thing. And again, and I think all those people, it kickstarted their career again, because as we were saying prior to that, things were dead.
Yeah.
So it was definitely the right move. The time, all the planets lined up. Ace and Peter were so willing to do it, but even Gene and Paul came to they had no choice but to say, this is what we have to do. There's we cannot. I think they were living on borrowed time otherwise.
Yeah. True.
Good point.
Ask.
It's an interesting question, because do you think it was a good idea for the band to reunite? Of course, but the 96 reunion, as they call it, was, again, it's a recurring theme here, a nostalgia package. The real reunion started with them now moving forward as a result of the springboard that we call the reunion tour. With the Psycho Circus. Yeah. Was a Psycho Circus a good idea? Looking back, absolutely, because that made Kiss who they are today, and they're still around as a result. Personally, I think it wasn't a good idea, because I wanted that one-off for the reunion, and I wanted Eric and Bruce back in the band. And with the problems that they were having with Peter and Ace, it's like, you see, I was right. They shouldn't have moved forward. It's right back to where they started. And again, my fears were being realized. Like, okay, this is the beginning of the end. For a long time, I was loving Kiss and being anxious at the same time, because every day it could be the end. It could be the end. It could be the end. And this is why I became so obsessive with the band. And I tried to go to every show, buy every item, because do everything now, because it's going to be over soon. 20 years later, I'm still seeing all the shows, and they come
and using the same excuse.
Exactly. So a really interesting question. Claudia?
Indeed. Yeah, I agree. I think it was the right move. Commercially speaking, no doubt, it was massive. I think they were the best selling tour in '96, and they toured the world again. Places that they had never been before. Many people seen them for the first time. So no doubt. Now I think that's interesting, because as you said, Pask, that led to the Kiss we have today, with makeup, with the costumes, with the big show. Because I without the reunion, I couldn't see how Kiss was going to come back, taking off the makeup and touring, clubs, or for certainly they were not going to tour arenas and go everybody going all over the map with Bruce and Eric. So they had to sustain the machine with the makeup, with the usual Kiss show and everything. So that was thanks to the reunion. So I think we have KISS today, thanks to the reunion, So the reunion, it could have been great that it was like a one-off, as you said, but it was the beginning of what we have today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, for our closing remarks, and yes, we're already there, guys, once again, thank you so much for coming on and having a great evening talking KISS. As you know, Clyde and I we do this every week with interviews and fan profiles. It's great to just come together, relax, and just chat about the band, and we just have amazing discussions as a result. And we always, again, I mention this often, we always find something new to talk about. We always learn something new. We always take a different perspective, and my concern oftentimes with doing a discussion panel is, I don't want to repeat what other podcasts are doing and what other podcasts are saying, and, or even us repeating what we've said in other podcasts and other episodes. But it seems that every time we've come together, it's always so different, so fresh, because we have such amazing perspectives, or different perspectives even, that it always seems different. And that is really a tribute to all of you. So, thank you so much for making the discussion panel episodes so amazing.
Thank you so much. I mean, you have no idea how much I always look forward to those.
Yep, me too.
That was great, man. So, as Paz was saying, this is great. It's a great evening, talking KISS, and it's always interesting to get different points of view. Sometimes we think that all of us, think the same way, and that we always have the same opinions, but, looking at different perspectives. So you keep learning, and you see things in a different way. So thanks again, Greg, Pat, of course, Paz.
So much.
Always great to be here with you guys, always. So, Greg, Pat, do you guys have any closing remarks, anything you would like to say?
Not just to say what we were saying before is that the four of us look like the original four members of KISS. We all have our own. We all have our own points of view. Which, when we mesh together, it's magic.
Wow, I like it.
I kind of agree with that. I really agree with that, because what I enjoy also is what you said, Claudio, about the fact that we don't necessarily have the same opinions, but we don't necessarily try to convince each other that what we think is the right thing. We have our own perspectives and our own ways to look at things, which makes it interesting. Really makes it interesting. And like you said, it flows, and there's no, that's what I love about this whole thing.
Yeah. So again, guys, once again, thank you so much. And definitely let's do this again soon, real soon.
For sure.
So to the KISS Army, thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and remember, never stop rocking. Take care, everyone.
Bye. Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode, like and subscribe on YouTube, or follow us on Spotify, Automatic, iHeartRadio, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to make yourself heard. Leave us a comment on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. See you all soon, KISS Army.